Hey guys, what's up? Carter here. Well, I'm having another strange knife thought, I guess is what I'll call it. I'm going to title this video Interesting Knife Thoughts or Strange Knife Thoughts or something along those lines. First off, just a disclaimer. Whoa, there's that moving knife again. Look at that. Whoa. Woo. Got the force. Let's try that again. Whoa, whoa. Okay, anyway, sorry guys. This kind of sparked from the video I did where I talked about my Dalibor Sirius here, and just had a few thoughts in my head. And first off, a disclaimer, this by no means am I trying to interject any sort of ideas in your heads or say that, you know, I think it should be this way because of this, or you should change the way you think of things. Not at all. This is just an open discussion about an idea that I had that popped in my head, and I found it kind of interesting, so I'm going to do a video about it. And that is basically kind of the idea why generally we expect custom knives, handmade knives, to be as good as, if not better, than machine-made or production knives in terms of finish. And, you know, kind of wanting it to be perfect. And to some of you, you may be like, well, duh, of course we do. You know, you're paying those kind of prices and yada, yada, yada. You want it to be perfect and you expect a higher level of excellence from a custom knife. And so what I'm doing is kind of, you know, taking myself away from that idea and thinking about it differently, because it is kind of interesting. In a lot of other areas of handmade goods, that's not the case. And what I mean by that is in a lot of handmade things, such as paintings, such as handmade pottery, handmade clothes, sculptures, all those things, you're actually expecting it to have that hand touch, that handmade feel. You want the bubbles in that glass. You want the slightly imperfect thickness on that handmade kiln-fired houseware, you know, the bowls, the cups, and things like that. You want it to look like somebody was sitting there and using their artistic ability to make that said good, and you kind of are somewhat paying extra for those imperfections. That goes with everything. You know, you don't want it to look like a perfect factory-made, machine-made thing. You want it to look organic and natural. And it's funny because in knives, generally speaking, we're the exact opposite. We do not want that. We want our handmade knives, our custom knives, to look like they were made with laser precision by some super perfect high-tech machinery. That's kind of interesting because, you know, I don't know where that idea necessarily comes from. I mean, I guess my guess would be, if I had to throw something out there, that it's kind of just the achievement of, for some reason in knives and some other things, like maybe watchmaking and things like that. Kind of part of the appeal is revering in the ability of the human hand to do something so precise and perfect, and the more perfect that we can get our human hand to make it, the more the more pride you can take in it, I guess you'd say, or the more reverence you can have for it, or something like that. And what inspired that is this knife right here, because I mentioned in my review that, you know, the fit on this is spot on perfect, laser precise, lock up, the way everything fits together, the centering, the detent, you know, everything that's important is perfect. But some of the finishing, you know, you can definitely tell that it was done by hand, you know, probably with a Dremel or other such hand tools. And it's got tiny imperfections where you can see, oh, I see where he did this here, and I can see where this one's slightly uneven on here. And, you know, you can definitely tell that this was done in this guy's, I think he does it in his garage. You know, you can tell that he spent his personal time, his hands, to make this thing, and I actually enjoyed it. I actually like that in this knife. I kind of take pride in that. I don't know, it just reminds me that he made this, and I'm carrying it in my pocket now. Of course, it'd be a different story if it wasn't centered, and, you know, it didn't lock up right, and, you know, it was sloppy. You know, that would be a different story. But because just, you know, the kind of organic nature of it really draws me to this knife. And it kind of made me think, you know, why are we trying to push our custom makers to make knives, you know, machine-made knives like this Chris Reeve? I mean, if you want a perfectly precise fit and finish knife, there's plenty of higher-end production knives that'll give that to you. why pay the extra dollars just for basically this? I don't know. You know what I mean? You following? You know, and once again, I'm not saying that I think custom knives should have poor fit and finish or anything like that. I'm just throwing out ideas that I just found it kind of interesting. And the reason this all came about is literally my example. I did the video on this. I mentioned how I actually like how you can tell that it was done, you know, it has hand work done on it, and yet it works well. I mean, everything looks awesome, and I really love this knife. It's been in my pocket for the last 2 days, and it'll probably stay there. But yeah, I did the video on this, and then I went upstairs and I grabbed a coffee mug to get a drink, and it happened to be a handmade, kiln-fired, you know, pottery mug that was done by an artist from my hometown. He actually does fairly well for himself. And all those things I mentioned were on there. You know, it was by no means perfect, you know, and it wasn't trying to be. It wasn't trying to look like a perfect coffee mug where everything's in proportion and there's no marks on it and there's no hand marks on it. It was the opposite. It was full of it. Full of it. I mean, generally speaking, it was all uniform and, you know, it was a great work. But still, you could see how the handle, he pressed the bottom with his thumb, and you could see a little tiny imprint of his thumbprint, and it kind of was cool because it's like, wow, that's his thumbprint in this thing he made for me that I'm using. And it was kind of cool, and then it made me think of, why don't we feel the same way about things like knives? Why do we not want to see those things? You know, people talk about it all the time. They talk about how there's no marks on it, there's no machining marks, everything's perfectly even, and once again, I guess that just comes from appreciating the ability of the human hand to achieve some sort of perfection with steel and things like that. But let me know what you think. Have you ever had like maybe a custom knife where it wasn't absolutely perfect and you could see kind of a little bit of the story of how it was made? You could tell, oh, I see how he ground that, or, you know, I see how this kind of was done. I can see where he did this over here. Do you like that, or is that a no-no for you? And you just say, no, you know, it's not perfect enough. He should have cleaned it up better, or, you know, whatever. Let me know. What do you guys think? Generally, I follow that path. If I pay a good amount of money for a custom knife, I expect, you know, a higher level of finish on it for the most part. And there has been knives, custom knives that I've paid for where I was a little disappointed because I'm like, oh wow, I can see a machining mark here, I can see something there. But for some reason on this knife, I love it. I enjoy it. I like how it's not perfect. It actually makes me like this knife more. And I'm not sure why it's the case with this knife and not necessarily some of the others that I've had in the past. And so I guess part of the reason for this video is me trying to work through that and figure that out. But let me know what your thoughts are. Have you ever had a knife where you actually appreciated kind of the hand that made it? Or are you completely against that and, you know, want absolute perfection or close as you can to it? Let me know. Leave a comment, do a video response, whatever you like. All right, guys, take it easy.